Welcome again to another session with Andrew Hurd, your questions on church planning. And the one we've got today, Andrew, is about newcomers. So you've planted a church, maybe you've done all your background work, you've built your team, you're about to launch, and you're almost too successful too soon. You've got newcomers coming in, but it's not really the right time. What do you do with them?
Yeah, okay. This is a big critical question, so it's a good question to deal with. Obviously the basis for our growth has got to be having people come and then ministering in such a way that we're able to keep people so that they can be with us long enough to have the word grow them. And so this has got to be the deal that we've worked out how to care for them. And of course, it's just an expression of love that we look after people who come and join us. It's interesting, as I hear about churches launching, I'm finding guys are quite surprised that, they launch with a team of 30 people and they're quite surprised on their first day. They've done promotion, they've done a bit of profile work. They're actually getting 10 to a dozen new people turn up. And so that is interesting and exciting. So what do you do? I reckon there's 4 steps you need to take with newcomers. And just in saying that, it outlines the fact that you've got to be thinking strategically about newcomers. You've got to be thinking about a deliberate process. Don't just assume that all you need to do is plan to be nice and warm and welcoming and it'll all work. That won't work, it'll fade. So you've got to be deliberate and intentional and do it out of love. 4 things, I reckon. There's probably many others, but 4 things. The first step is to work out what you do at the event. So your launch event, your first service, how are we going to welcome at that event? Give some training to people who will be part of your launch team in how they first approach new people, what they say, how they don't freak them out, how they don't weird them out. Give some input there. And if you're a group that's large enough to think that greeters, formal greeters at the door kind of deal are important, then you need to have thought into that. But you need to actually think into the prior question, at the event welcoming, will greeters seem kind of culturally weird? You can't just sort of take what the bigger churches do and land it in a small place and expect it will look and work well. But, if you've decided the greeters to go, what am I going to do with them? What are they going to be, what's their role? How do they do it? So welcoming at the event, you've got to think into that. Second thing is we need to get info from new people. So you've launched your first launch service, you get 5, 10 new people. You want to be able to get a relationship with them and follow along. How are you going to get the information from them to do that follow-up? Now, we use a card system. Lots of churches do. We've used that pretty much from the very beginning. Will that be what you use? You've got to think into that. Again, culturally, is it going to work in your setting and scene? Is a visitor's book better? Deliberate welcomers who actually are asking if they can contact people. Work out how to get information, but work hard to get information. And speak. If you're going to use cards, speak to it from the front or in the context of the gathering in some way and work out what to say. Just a little tip there on that one, actually. Don't ever say, help. This drives me insane. When people say, you've got a card, if you want us to help you in any way, let us know your details. No man is going to write down, oh, here's my details, help me. And so don't ever use the word help. Just say, if you want more information, if there's some books we can point you to, we'd love to hear from you. Don't ever just chop the word help out. Third thing you need to do is, what do you do with that info? So if you've got, somehow you've gathered, collected information about the new people who've come through the visitors book, cards, whatever, what do you do next? You've got to have a deliberate strategy there. We work at the phone call within 2 days, a visit from the minister. At night time, you just drop around, express some love, say, look, we want to just say hello. At that point, you can be saying, is there anything we can help with? Because at that point, it's in the context of a relationship. It's not just from the front cold, and it works. I used to work with a guy who'd take a cake at that point because he used to bake his own cakes.
Oh, okay, that's not weird at all.
That's how it works. But he pulled it off. He pulled it off brilliantly. He just had the old man vibe that you or I, Mark, can't pull off as well. But he had the old man vibe where he'd drop around with a cake and just say, look, hope this is nice and hope it helps and everything. When you go to that occasion, on the third thing, you've got to take an invite. So you've got to be ready for an event that's coming, a newcomers lunch, a newcomers supper, a newcomers dinner, so that you can go around and invite them to that, and then pass that person on to someone who will continue a follow-up process with them. The fourth thing is to have the newcomer event where you can build relationship and get them back again. A bunch of steps you've got to build in straight away.
You know, a lot of churches now are looking at these sorts of membership courses. You know, like you can have, say, Christianity Explored or something like that, which is really about contacting people, but then encouraging people to join a church, or even helping them understand what joining means. Do you have much to say about that?
Yeah, we have always done a membership process. We've now got a very formal one, and it's a 4-week, 1 night a week program that people come and join. And that for us has been powerful and important. From the early on stage, so very early on when we're talking 20, 30, 40, 50 people, we did that through what we called newcomer nights. And so once a month, we would invite people to my place. Kathy and I would host a supper, and we would outline, our great hope for the power of the gospel to impact this place, what it is that we value, the things, where we've come from, where we're going, the fruit of the gospel we're praying and trusting will happen. Open up for questions. Get to know people. We do a bit of a time where we went around and asked who they all were and shared some stories and what's something you enjoy doing. And those occasions have been we've run them once a month for 15 years. Within 2 months of our launch team meeting, we were running newcomers nights every month. And we now sometimes run them twice a month, so on and so forth. And critical, I think that's absolutely critical. And then we built into it a further structure called a newcomers lunch, where we did a bit more membership information. So the newcomers supper was a first relational contact with Andrew and Kathy, got them to build relationship with other new people. Actually, just on that, it is worth saying, it is futile to try and get established congregation members to keep being friends with new people. We just don't have that many spare relational links. And the best, most obvious, and lots of churches have been doing this, best, most obvious thing is to get newcomers to connect with new people. And so getting them together in a supper, and then getting them together in a lunch, and providing a context in those places where you have relational interactions, not just with you from the front, not just you with them, but with each other, means that they come to church and they're connecting with people who are in the same place as them, new to this church, finding their way through, more likely to stick. Yeah.
Now, look, you've outlined for us some practical ideas about the sorts of things that are going to be covered in a newcomers meeting or a course or something like that. Is there a place where you have to settle for people what you believe? I mean, is there a rundown at some point with EV where you say, and by the way, part of this meeting us is knowing that these are the sorts of things that we stand for?
Yeah. We've gone through transitions on this. So in the first 5 years, it was our newcomers supper had a spot where we talked about our theology, what we believed, the things we valued. I talked about what it meant to say we were an evangelical church, because our name was Central Coast Evangelical Church. We now call ourselves EV. And so I'd run through what evangelical meant. I'd talk about the place of the Bible, and open up for questions, and often we'd get some theological questions in that context. Now, that was important for us in the first 5 years because we were a parachute launch. We didn't have a launch team that had a common gospel conviction. I think I might have talked about this in past contexts, but we had a launch team were all over the place, and so it was very important for me to lay down very clearly what our theology was in its fundamentals, not in every detail. So we didn't, I didn't talk about, I didn't raise predestination there. I didn't raise women's ordination there.
Did you explain transubstantiation?
That's right. I didn't. I didn't pursue, some of those more finer details but I did talk about, the importance of we're a church that's relating to God through the scriptures, rather than relating to God through experiences or through the ceremonies of church or through the way you understand and think. For us, the Bible, I lay down some of those foundations. Usually questions would come, questions about governance and so on. People had those various things. And, I try and judge what the nature of the group was on an evening and work out whether too much detail on that's going to freak out the person who's just going, I just want someone to love me. But after 5 years, we've deliberately shifted away from that in the newcomer supper, because there is now a strong enough culture theologically that people who come to us pick up a lot of those vibes in the air. And so our newcomer supper now is almost exclusively about building relationship, connection, helping people get a vibe for who we are and what we're about, what's in our heart. Whereas we now run what we call EV Startup, and have done for some time, which is a 4-week program. That's when we lay down some of the more big theological planks. Yeah.
But you might say,
so I ran that.
If you're a new church in a new town and no one knows you, maybe your beginners course, so to speak, your membership course, might have a salting of some of those things so that people can actually distinguish you from other church experiences.
Yeah, well, yeah. If I landed in Coffs Harbour, which is not a bad place to go and plant a church, if I landed in Coffs Harbour, I would think the first 3 to 4 years I would have the monthly supper, and it would be come and meet my wife and I, see what our heart is, who we're about, just our love for Jesus, our desire to see him transform lives, founded on the Bible. I'd just put those main planks, but it'd be about establishing relationship, so that when they come to church the following week, they're not coming to a strange place. That'd be the main key thing. Then I'd build the lunch event, where we created more connections, a bit more theological underpinnings, a bit more of our distinctives, and then the full-on membership course 4 years down the track, which is a longer, the 4-week kind of program. Yeah. I wouldn't build all of that in from the beginning.
Mate, you've given us a huge amount to think about. Thanks for that. And if you actually have a question for Andrew, listen, an address is coming up on the screen in a moment. You can send it through to us, and we'll send it through to Andrew. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, pleasure.